Today we're going to discuss the Parsha of Chukat. There are mitzvot. Some mitzvot are divided, are called chukim. There are mitzvot that make no sense. They transcend our rationale, our understanding. For example, don't mix milk and meat and mix wool and linen. And there are mitzvot that are testimonials. They remind us of historical events. And then we have mitzvot, which are logical and rational, make sense. Thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not steal. But of all the mitzvot, of all the chukim, there is one chayik, there's one mitzvah that stands out. The Torah calls it Zois Chukas HaTorah. This is the ultimate mystery in the Torah. So much so that King Solomon, who God blessed with wisdom, he was the wisest man that ever lived, Shlomo says, Achakma, I try to understand this mitzvah, and it's far from me. I can't understand it. I can't even begin to understand it. Many people say that what is the great mystery of this mitzvah? If a person came in contact with a corpse, which is the ultimate source of impurity, and he becomes impure, he's not allowed to go into the temple. And first he has to purify himself. How do you purify himself? You have to take a red heifer that's purely red. It doesn't even have two black hairs. And you take it, and after you slaughter it, this was outside the temple. It was actually done in the Mount of Olives, which is the mountain facing the east of the Temple Mount, facing the temple. And they would burn the animal and the ashes, mix the ashes with wellspring water and with the other ingredients that they put in, the grass and some cedar wood, and they would all burn it together, and they would mix this ash with the wellspring water, and they would sprinkle it on the third day. They would count 7 days on the third day and on the seventh day, and then he would go to the mikveh and he would be pure. After 7 complete days, the person would be pure and he would be allowed to enter into the temple. What's the great mystery? Why is this such a logical conundrum, something that even Shlomo Melech couldn't make sense? So people say because we have a very strange law. The law states that whoever is involved in preparation of this mixture of the ashes and the water, whoever is involved in the preparation of the red heifer, in turn becomes impure. Not the severe level of impurity of someone who comes in contact with a corpse, but impure that day he's impure, he goes to the mikveh, and then in the evening he's pure. So it makes no sense. Here, this concoction, the ashes together with the water, has the power to purify someone who becomes impure with the severest form of impurity, who came in contact with a corpse, which is called the grandfather of all impurities, death. And nevertheless, these ashes and the water has the ability to purify him, and yet the Kohen who's engaged, who's involved in preparation of this formula, he becomes impure. How do you explain that? It makes no sense. So the Rebbe once commented and he told Rabbi Riskin, he says, that's what everyone says. That's what the whole world says. That's the great mystery of the red heifer. But the Rebbe says, no, it's incorrect. Because that's actually logical. You know, when you sweep, when you use a broom to sweep the dirt, sweep the floor, or the mop to mop the dirty floor, it's to be expected that the broom will get dirty, that the mop will get dirty. So yes, it makes sense that the Kohen who's engaged in preparing this concoction, who has to engage with the one who is impure, that in the process he becomes impure. You're dealing with, it's like doctors that go into the hospital and they can walk out sick because you're dealing with illness. You're immersed in illness. It's not so far-fetched that it can affect you. You know, psychologists have to be careful because they hear so much human misery. It's hard. They have to shield themselves it's hard for them to make sure that they don't get depressed or get down or pulled down by all that negativity. You know, it's like the story with the intern who was having his first day in the office, a psychotherapist, and after a full day, he turns to the chief psychologist, Mr. Kaplan. He says, "I don't understand. How do you do this? I've been listening all day to all his woes and human misery, and I'm reeling. I just, how do you handle it?" Mr. Kaplan says, "Who's listening?" You know, they turned the couch the other way, so you can't see if they're listening or taking a nap. That's just a joke. But the idea is it makes sense that when you're dealing with negativity, it's going to affect you. When you're wrestling with the enemy, you're going to get a few punches. Yes, you will get hurt. You're going to win, but you're going to get hurt. A war in which not a single soldier gets hurt, that's a miracle. That happened once. Those cases where the Torah states it because it was so astonishing. Even if you win, you're going to get hurt. You're going to be affected. So what's the big mystery? That when you're dealing and engaged with impurity, that the Kohen who's engaging with the purifying will himself become impure. That's not the mystery. You know what the mystery is? Because the Torah says that everyone that's engaged in the process of preparing the red heifer becomes impure, with the exception of the Kohen who's actually sprinkling the ashes and this water on the Jew who became impure. You have to say that he is pure. Because if he is impure, then when he touches, whatever he touches becomes impure. So then whatever he sprinkles cannot possibly purify the person who became contaminated. So we must say that he's 100% pure, which makes no sense. Because if you're going to tell me that the logic behind why you say purification was winning nasty and negative, it's going to affect you somewhat. You can't help it. Are you able to hear? Is everyone able to hear? Okay. So how much more so the one who's actually sprinkling, the one who is actually face to face with the Jew became contaminated by touching the corpse, surely he should be the one who should become impure. So how is it possible that he, who's closest, who's standing right before the one who's contaminated, and he's the one who's purifying him, he remains pure? That's the mystery. And the Rebbe was discussing about the idea of the shluchim, that he sends his personal emissaries, and he sends them all over the world. And they come to communities that are not religious or not overtly and consciously. You don't see that conscious connection with godliness, with Hashem, with his Torah. If anything, it may be the antithesis. How is it possible that they will not be affected by their environment? Instead, these 5,000 shluchim and 5,000 Chabad houses, not only they were not affected or the families were not affected, they transformed and created revolutions and changed their communities and transformed their communities into Torah communities, into vibrant, robust, Jewish, godly communities. How is that possible? So he says that's the ultimate mystery of the red heifer. That Hashem, there's a special protection for the Kohen who's in purifying, he is unscathed, untouched. And because otherwise he would not be able to purify. Because how do you influence someone else? You can only teach by example. No one is listening. No one is paying attention to what you're saying. No matter how brilliant or how eloquent you are. People watch what you do, not what you say. You could only affect someone, influence someone by personal example. Words from the heart enter the heart. Enthusiasm was contagious. They see you, they see your family, they see how you live, your relationships, and how you live day to day. That's what inspires people. So the Kohen has to remain pure. Only then could he actually affect and bring purity and transform and change the community. And that is the ultimate mystery. It says when Moshe encountered this idea of total impurity, the grandfather of impurity, which is death, a corpse. Why is that the ultimate source of impurity? Because death is completely unnatural. When God created the world, Adam and Chava were programmed to live forever. Death was only a consequence of the sin, of the original sin, of eating from the tree of knowledge. Because why should there be death? Anything connected with God, God is eternal. Anything connected with God should also live eternal. Angels don't die. Energy doesn't die, as physics teaches us. Why should we die? If we're connected with the source of life, there should be no death. Death is a tragedy. We can't make peace with death. As sin, he ate from the tree of knowledge. That's a good thing. Suddenly he became knowledgeable. People go to college, thousands of dollars, bankrupt themselves knowledgeable. So is that a reward? He ate from the tree and suddenly became knowledgeable? The answer is no. He became self-knowledgeable. He became self-aware, self-conscious. This is negative. This led to something very nasty. He became egotistical. He became disconnected. Before that, him and Chava were running around naked because they were like children who are completely little children, unself-conscious. There's no self-awareness. He was only aware of Hashem. There was nothing to be ashamed of. There was nothing to hide. Everything was so pure. Everything was so genuine. Everything was so authentic and godly. Suddenly became self-aware, self-conscious, which leads to tremendous angst, existential angst, and all the problems start. Life, you're disconnected from Hashem. That introduces death. The grandfather.
No sound.
No sound? Okay. Are you able to hear
No
now?
sound.
No sound?
It's interrupted.
Oh, okay. Hold on. How about now? Are you able to hear? Are you able to hear?
Yes.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, now it's better.
Yeah,
Okay.
can hear
No
now.
sound.
Can hear now. But it's right.
Okay. Are you able to hear now? Okay.
I
Yes.
can hear,
Okay,
yes.
great.
No.
No, I hear you. You know, the speaker said, I hear voices and I'm not a prophet. Okay, okay, let's try. Are we good now?
Yes.
Okay, good. So when Moshe encountered this idea of impurity, total disconnect from godliness, total disconnect from life, from the source of life, Moshe's face turned red, turned purple. How is it possible to purify this person? It's like cutting off and telling me you can make a head transplant. How is that possible? Once a person has completely disconnected himself from godliness, once a person has come in contact with the grandfather of impurity, with a corpse, and the person is spiritually dead and impure, disconnected, how is it possible to reconnect them? Moshe's face turned red. He didn't understand. The answer is when the Kohen, where does the Kohen live? He is the His whole life evolves around the holiest spot on earth in the temple. What does the Kohen do? The Kohen leaves the temple and has to go meet the Jew who's impure. He has to go to the Mount of Olives, away from the temple. And in the process of engaging to help this Jew, who's so lost and disconnected from any visible and conscious connection to Yiddishkeit, to his Judaism, the Kohen becomes impure in the process. So the Kohen is sacrificing his life. It's the ultimate sacrifice. In Hebrew, we call it Mesirat Nefesh. When a Jew is ready to martyr himself, to give up his life for his Jewishness, the non-Jew holds a gun to his head, points a gun to his head. He says, kiss the cross, bow down, kneel, or lose your life. A Jew would rather give up his life, would rather be burnt alive in the order of the phase, than, God forbid, kneel, bend, and bow down to the idol. We call that Mesirat Nefesh, giving up his life. The question is, it would make more sense to call it Mesirat Haguf, giving up your body. He's giving up his physical body. Why do you call it Mesirat Nefesh, giving up your soul? He's not sacrificing his soul. He's sacrificing his body. But the reason why, what's true Mesirat Nefesh? This is this Kohen who's sacrificing his place in the temple by leaving the temple and becoming pure, sacrificing his soul. He's sacrificing his spirituality. Because now that he's impure, he's not allowed to enter into the temple until that evening. And why and for who is he sacrificing himself? For a Jew who came in contact with a corpse, with a purity, who's completely disconnected from anything godly, who's spiritually dead, whose head has been chopped off, figuratively, spiritually speaking. And the Kohen is ready to sacrifice his soul, his involvement in holiness for this Jew. Why? It makes no sense. It's not rational. This is true Mesirat Nefesh. He's sacrificing his soul for his fellow Jew. And why is he doing that? Oh, he loves his fellow Jew literally like he loves himself. And that's why it's called Chukat. Chukat means it's carved, it's etched. Chakika, it's the same root of the word chakika. It's like etched. It's like the 10 Commandments that were etched into the stone. Judaism and his love for his fellow Jew is etched into his being. It's not like letters written on erasable. If his Judaism was religion, he wouldn't be ready to sacrifice his own religiosity for his fellow Jew. A Jew who's so disconnected, who's so spiritual, can care less about his Judaism, who has no visible account to anything Jewish. Why would he sacrifice his soul, his religiosity for that Jew? But because his God is immersed into Torah says,
Silence again.
You froze.
Oh, wow. Okay. Too loud.
It froze.
How about now? Frozen.
Now you're good.
Now we're good? Okay.
Yeah, we missed the last few minutes.
Okay. So someone who's just religious would not be ready to give up his sacrifice, his religiosity for this Jew. For this Jew is not religious. who has no overt and conscious connection, visible connection to anything Jewish or godly. But because the Yiddishkeit is hakika, it's etched into your being, love your fellow Jew literally, like yourself, therefore, this Kohen is ready to sacrifice his soul, sacrifice his spirituality for the sake of that fellow Jew. And this is what ignites the other Jew. When the other Jew sees how real this is, that being Jewish, my Jewishness, is so meaningful and is so real that you, the Kohen, are ready to sacrifice your spirituality for my sake? I thought being Jewish is no big deal. It's like you have blue eyes and you're Jewish. So what? Who cares? But if being Jewish means so much that you're ready to sacrifice, leave your community, leave your sheltered community, and bring your wife and children and raise them in this community with all the risks involved. You care so much about me that you move into these communities and you make this your new home, and you're not going to leave until every last Jew is consciously connected with Hashem and until Mashiach comes. So the Jew can't help but be moved and think to himself, wait a minute, wow, being Jewish matters that much? My Jewishness is so core and so essential that you're ready to make that sacrifice? That the Kohen is ready to make that sacrifices beyond any rhyme or reason? He's ready to sacrifice his soul for my sake. The Jew can't help but be touched. And that's what ignites him, that's what reconnects him, that's what inspires him, that's what purifies him. And that's why the Torah says, this is the essence of the whole entire Torah. How do I know that Judaism is chukas? Judaism is something that's etched into your being. Judaism is not religiosity or just spirituality, but Judaism is your core, it's your essence. It's only when you fulfill the mitzvah of love your fellow Jew literally like you love yourself, to the extent that you're ready to sacrifice your spiritual well-being for his sake. It's a beautiful story with Rabbi Baruch of Mezherbuz, the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. Those who were with us on our trip in Ukraine, we visited the Baal Shem Tov, and nearby is Rabbi Baruch of Mezherbuz, right there. Once the Tzemach Tzedek heard his children talk about the sacrifice of the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, Mesirat Nefesh. So he turns to them, he says, you call that self-sacrifice? I'll tell you what sacrifice is, Mesirat Nefesh. Let me tell you a story with Rabbi Baruch of Mezherbuz. Rabbi Baruch of Mezherbuz, he said there was in this town, there was, so for Rabbi Baruch of Mezherbuz calls in his Hasidim, and he tells them, I want to divorce my wife. Hasidim were shocked that the Rebbe wants to divorce his wife. He says, go ask my wife and ask her if she agrees. So they go, the Hasidim go to his wife and said, your husband, the Rebbe, wants to divorce you. He said, listen, whatever my husband wants, my husband is a tzaddik. If this is what he wants, maybe I'm not worthy of being his wife anymore. Of course I agree. So the Hasidim came back and they said, mission accomplished, he agrees. So the Rebbe says, since she agrees, so it's as if it's done already. Now I want to marry, there's this daughter of the innkeeper in town. I want to marry her. She's a beautiful girl. She's a God-fearing. I want to marry her. And you know what? I'm sure her parents would agree to marry the Rebbe. So let's make a l'chaim. Let's drink a l'chaim. And let's consider it as if it's done already. They all said l'chaim. And the Rebbe says, okay, now that she belongs to me, now he's going to have a downfall. This wicked person is going to have a real downfall. The Hasidim didn't understand what was going on. Later on, they found out the next day, what happened was that the son of the Paritz, the son of the nobleman who owned that whole region, had his eye on this girl, the daughter of the innkeeper. She was gorgeous. And he just lusted her. And of course, she was very modest and she completely rejected him. He wouldn't pay him any attention. And he said how he swore as if his love to her and he'll marry her. And of course, she would never marry a non-Jew, and she wouldn't pay him any attention. So he decided to take by force what he can't get legitimately. He's going to take by force. So he decided to hide. He's going to hide in the barn, in the silo of this Jew, and at night, when everyone's asleep, he'll climb out and he'll have his way with her. And the Rebbe felt all of this, and he did everything to protect her. What happened was that night, suddenly he was an innkeeper, and there was this group that was traveling, and they had this very heavy case of merchandise. They didn't want to leave outside. So they asked the innkeeper where they can overnight keep it in a safe place. So he says, you know what, keep it in my silo. It's safe. You'll collect. It was a very, very heavy case. They put it, and in the middle of it, it collapsed, and the guy broke in pain. He was yelling and screaming. The innkeeper came out and sees what's happening. They called the police. They realized, and he walked away wounded and caught. And the Rebbe did all of this just to save this innocent Jewish girl from that horrible, horrible plot that this Jew was this would-be rapist was planning. So the idea of sacrificing yourself, sacrificing your soul. And speaking of Rabbi Baruch, there was another famous story of Rabbi Baruch and Mezrabuz, that one of his Hasidim, he would take money from people. He would go to the big marketplace. He would buy a lot of merchandise. And then he would come home and he would sell it, and he was able to pay back all his debts, and he was able to make a living. And one time he was traveling, and it was Shabbos. He's not allowed to travel on Shabbos. He didn't have anywhere safe to keep it. So he decided, listen, I'm not going to desecrate Shabbos. I don't care if I'm going to lose all my money and I'm going to go bankrupt. There's no way in the world I'm going to desecrate Shabbos. I would rather go bankrupt. So he left all the expensive merchandise out in the middle of the field. And then he walked to Mezrabuz, He comes to the Rebbe's Tish Friday night. And the Rebbe, Friday night, the whole Friday night, started cursing this chassid. What kind of reckless, irresponsible human being are you? You borrow money from everyone? Borrow huge sums of money. It's not just your money that's on the line. And you just abandon everything in the middle of nowhere. And you're causing all this money to be lost. How dare you? What kind of person are you? You could imagine the Rebbe is yelling at this Jew in front of all the Hasidim. He's turning red, purple, green. He's turning all colors. And this continued all Shabbos. Shabbos day, by the lunch, by the Kiddush. The Rebbe is cursing him out, and by Shalosh Shudas. The Rebbe, that Shabbos, he had a visitor, another great Rebbe, and he couldn't stand how the Rebbe was embarrassing and humiliating this Jew in public. We all know that if you embarrass and humiliate a Jew in public, you lose your shit. So he couldn't take it anymore. He turns to his, I think it was his mechut, What are you? How could you do this? What are you embarrassing this poor Jew like this? So the Rebbe said, because I saw that he's going to lose everything. He's going to go bankrupt. His whole family will be ruined, destroyed. His daughters will never be able to marry anyone. So I decided that I'm going to save him. By me humiliating him and embarrassing him in public, so that substituted that he doesn't have to lose any money. And miraculously, all his merchandise, he came after Shabbos, all his merchandise was intact, it wasn't touched. But he said, but Mechutin, you're going to lose your share in the world to come. So Rabbi Baruch says, I don't care. Let me lose my share in the world to come. But this Jew shouldn't have any financial loss. That's called Mesirat Nefesh. That means sacrificing your soul, sacrificing your spirituality, sacrificing your own purity, risking your own purity to save another Jew. And it's that touches the other Jew. And that's what the Rebbe did with the Shluchim. That's why Hashem says to Moshe, they should bring the red heifer to you. Why to you? Moshe is not the one who's involved in the red heifer. It's Aaron, the high priest, and the family of Kohanim. Because this idea, the Rebbe, the leader of the generation, he is the one who teaches us Chukat HaTorah, that Judaism is not religiosity, it's spirituality. Judaism is etched into our being. Every word and every letter in the Torah, we take it fundamentally. It says, love your fellow Jew like yourself. It means literally and fundamentally. And therefore the Rebbe sent his shluchim, his personal emissaries all over the world, risking, sacrificing, not just their material sacrifice, the spiritual sacrifice. Just because to love your fellow Jew like yourself, all 14 million Jews, every Jew, wherever they may be, anywhere in the world, all 70,000 Jews living in the Upper East Side, with those who are left. And when the Jew feels and senses that you really care about them, you genuinely care about them. This is not just some Kiruv project. They're not just a means to an end. It's not just a feather in my cap. It's nice for me to do Kiruv Rechokim. But I really care about them. And I am there with them. And it's unconditional love. This is love that makes no sense. It's unconditional. Just like you love yourself literally, without any rhyme or reason. You don't need any justification to love yourself. You don't love yourself because it's a mitzvah, because it's a religious duty or obligation. You love yourself naturally and unconditionally. So literally love your fellow Jew like yourself, because the Jew is etched into your being. You are them and they are you. Therefore, you're there for them and you care about them. This can't help but ignite and evoke a response from the Jew. The Jew never even suspected that being Jewish means so much. That the fact that they're Jewish and they're born to a Jewish mother and they're a golden link and a golden chain that goes all the way back to Abraham and will continue to the end of time is so meaningful and so powerful and so important. This is what purifies them. This is what reconnects them. Suddenly they start caring about their own Jewishness and they own their Jewishness and they reconnect. So it's that sacrifice, that self-sacrifice, that act, that activism, that drive. This is what touches and this is what created the largest renaissance of Jewish life, the greatest educational project in Jewish history that the Rebbe started. So this is Zois Chukas HaTorah. This is the law, the essence of the whole entire Torah. Why is it called Zois Chukas HaTorah? The entire Torah, all 613 mitzvot. Many mitzvot are in the category of mishpatim, they're rational laws. Many mitzvot are in the category of edut, testimonials. Chukim are a small group of mitzvot. And the mitzvah of the red heifer is one of the 613 mitzvot. Why do you say Zois Chukas HaTorah? This is the essence of the whole entire Torah. Because, as the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe once said, he says, the world makes a big mistake. The world says, halavai, we should do the chukim, the mitzvot that are mystical, that are super rational, with the same zest and enthusiasm with which we do the mitzvot that makes sense to us. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, etc. The previous Rebbe said it's a big mistake. On the contrary, he says better we should do, halavai, we should do the mishpatim, the mitzvot that make sense, with the same enthusiasm that we do the chukim, the mitzvot that are super rational, that make no sense. Because the truth is, why do we do any mitzvah? Ultimately, why don't we steal? Why don't we kill? Why don't we hurt another human being? Because God said so, period. And we see that today. Those who don't have God in their life, the rioting, the looting, the stealing, the murder, the lawlessness, the complete disrespect for another human being, destroying people, destroying their lives, destroying their livelihoods. It's a sport today. Shaming people, humiliating people. It's a sport. There is no morality. It's a total breakdown, disintegration of civilized life. Complete breakdown. There is nothing. Thou shalt not murder means nothing. Murder has quadrupled in New York City just in the last few weeks. Quadrupled. We're going back to the 70s. Our mayor, with his own hands, has destroyed 30 years of work, hard work. All it takes is one fool in one moment to destroy what wise people have done. Thanks to the heroic work of our police, who brought crime down from 2,200 murders a year in the Dinkins era, down to less than 300 a year. He destroyed that. And now they want to defund and dismantle the police. The police have been vilified, abandoned, humiliated. No gratefulness, no thankfulness for the job, the incredible job that they've done in the last 30 years. Crime is out of control in all these cities. And the summer didn't even start yet. If there is no God, there's no morality, there's nothing. Thou shalt not murder doesn't mean anything. Chicago had 18 murders in one 24-hour period, the most in its history. And every day it's pretty close. This weekend, we're losing count already. New York City is out of control. Bullets flying. It's hard to believe. Thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not hurt another human being, throw bricks at another human being, this lawlessness. If there's no God, there's no morality. We're being led now by a bunch of thugs and lowlifes, terrorists, elite supremacists, Taliban, the Western Taliban. And no one says a word. There's no backbone, there's no spine. There's total breakdown, disintegration of civilization. It's the end. If there's no God, there's no morality, there's nothing. So why don't we steal ultimately? It's because this is the will of Hashem, because God said so. Not because it makes sense to us. Because it's a mystical, this is the will of Hashem. So the truth is, all mitzvot are really chukim. All mitzvot ultimately are divine and godly and sacred and holy. The only difference is that those mitzvot that make sense to us, it's because Hashem created us in a way that it should make sense to us. That even we should agree with it, that even our minds and our perception, sensitivities could understand it and agree with it. And that's what Hashem wanted, that these mitzvot, we shouldn't just do it because this is the will of Hashem. Hashem wants us to understand it, to perceive it, to the extent that we'll be disgusted. A person has to be disgusted by murder. A person has to be disgusted with theft. A person has to be disgusted with rape. And all these crimes, we should feel repulsed by it. A person who's not repulsed and is not disgusted by these crimes is a corrupt person. Versus the mitzvot that remain super rational. Thou shalt not mix milk and meat. As the Talmud says, we're not disgusted by it. Why should we be disgusted by mixing milk and meat? It makes no sense to us. Milk is kosher and meat is kosher. The only reason we're doing it is because this is the will of Hashem. So there are some mitzvot that Hashem, it remained in its pure form. This is the pure will of Hashem. And the other mitzvot, Hashem allowed us that it should agree with us. It should, in our own sensibilities, in our own mind, we should be able to agree with it and perceive it and sense it. And that's what Hashem wanted, that we should also be able to feel it and understand it. But ultimately, the root and the essence of the mitzvah is because this is the will of Hashem. And that's why there's one mitzvah that Hashem left in its pure state, the red heifer. And this is the essence of the whole Torah. Because in its pure state, this is the reason why we do all 613 mitzvahs. Even the mitzvah that are rational, even the mitzvah that are logical and that makes sense to us. Because ultimately it's divine and it's godly. And if we remove the divine and godly aspect, this is what we're left with. We're watching the debris. We're watching the complete collapse of Western civilization. The total crumbling, disintegration of civilization. We no longer have a government. We no longer have any rules and laws. To fund the police, this is the essential Noahide laws to set up a lawful society that's run by rules and laws. There's total lawlessness. And whoever is the bigger terrorist and whoever is the louder terrorist and whoever is the bigger bully, everyone is bullied and everyone is silent and everyone kneels down to them. Black Lives Matter, these are a bunch of terrorists. And everyone is intimidated. This is not civilization. Thou shalt not steal means nothing. Thou shalt not murder means nothing. And they don't care about black life because they're the crime, the victims of this crime, the skyrocketing crime, are those very same life that they claim that they care about, which of course they don't care. Life matters. They should call themselves Black Life Doesn't Matter. No life matters to them. It's all a power play. Whoever is more powerful, whoever is the bigger bully, there's no discussion. Everyone is intimidated. Everyone is bullied. Everyone is shamed. Everyone is canceled. Everyone. This is a jungle. We're not living in a civilized society. That's why you end up with Nazi Germany. You end up with communist Russia, communist China, North Vietnam. Then that's what we're living through. Welcome to Soviet America. This is the essence of the Torah. The purity of the mitzvot is because it's godly. In the shtetl, there was no crime. The shtetl was violent free. People didn't need any police. There was violent free. You had this town, Ninkapoop, the town Shmendrik and Ninkapoop. That was about it. People slept with their doors wide open. Everyone was Hashem, studying Torah, doing mitzvot, trying to improve themselves, trying to be kind, loving, kind, good. with their fellow Jew, with their families and neighbors and friends. So you had civilized communities. America used to be a civilized community. When they had prayers in the school, people slept with their doors wide open. There was no crime in America. Hardly any crime. People slept with the doors unlocked. I know people who remember. There was no inner city crime during the Depression when you had real hunger, because there was God in people's lives. America was founded in God we trust. With this foundation, America is based on something solid, and we have a civilized society. Now, it's naked power places. It's completely corrupt, rotten to the core, completely decadent. If you don't have the Chukat Torah, if you don't have that essence, that purity, that godly connection, everything falls apart. Thou shalt not steal, out the window. Thou shalt not murder, out the window. Thou shalt not embarrass, humiliate anyone in public, out the window. Thou shalt not destroy a person's livelihood, out the window. Thou shalt not lift up a hand and strike and hurt another person, out the window. Defund, dismantle the police, total lawlessness. There's no chukah, there's no law, period. Total lawlessness. So this is the foundation, this is the essence. We are facing something very existential. And without this foundation, society self-destructs. It collapses. Venezuela is the richest country in oil in the world. Its people today are collecting food consequences. It's not innocent. It sounds so wonderful. These are existential questions. Is the society based on law because there's a God in this world? Or if not, you're not just missing the red heifer. You're not just missing one detail. You have nothing. There's no chukah, there's no Torah, there's no rules, there's no laws. Absolutely nothing. Chaos, void, emptiness. By the way, you don't have to agree with anything that was said. It's okay. If you want to unmute yourself and comment. I see Heshi. Heshi has something to say.
Go, Heshi.
No, you have to unmute yourself. Heshi, you have to unmute yourself.
I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm good. I have no real comments. No, I understand what you're saying.
No?
Hanshi has, I'm sure.
No, I'm listening. I want to listen.
Okay.
That way when I opine, it will be profound. Go ahead, Heshi.
Tzvi, מה אתה אומר? Tzvi works in the UN. The Rebbe called the House of Darkness. He's bringing some light. He's bringing some light.
Yeah, they're massing UN forces.
Tzvi, what do you say?
No, I agree with what you say. I just don't know where can you find a Red Heifer I mean, there's no red. I mean, where can you find the red one?
Found the red one.
Actually, they found one. Actually,
Every year they find one.
that's a very good point. Throughout Jewish history, there were only 9 red heifers. Moshe made the first one, and during the first temple, I think they made 1. During the second temple, they made 7. Altogether, there were 9, and the 10th one Mashiach is going to make. And there were reports recently that they actually found a red heifer. They checked it. It doesn't have, it's totally red. It meets all the qualifications, and they're protecting it.
Clone it.
Sure. I think it's upstate New York somewhere. They're protecting it, make sure, because you're not allowed to carry anything, can't do any work. So they're getting ready. So Mashiach can come already. The red heifer we have. We're ready to go. Steph, what do you think?
So
Yeah, Shelley, yeah, please.
I was listening. It's fascinating. So the red heifer is like a symbol. I mean, it exists, but it's a symbol of the divine essence. So I was thinking about, because I used to teach literature and talk about the objective correlative, in which it's concretized. A symbol is the concretization of a larger idea almost. So I was wondering if that's an apt parallel to the red heifer, in the sense that it contains in itself a symbol of the divine essence. I don't know.
Yes, it does. And just to elaborate for a moment, you know, the animal, the red heifer, the cow, is represents that animalistic energy that we have within us. A red heifer represents a fiery animal, you know, the hot-blooded, fun-seeking, thrill-seeking self, that drive that we have, lust and cravings, and that pulls us down to materialism and to indulge, to lead to junk food and junk lifestyle. And what does the Torah tell us to do? You burn the red heifer and you reduce it to its ashes. What do you mean reducing it to its ashes? When you burn something, everything is a composite of the 4 basic ingredients: gas, air, liquid, water, energy, fire, and earth. When you burn something, so all the other elements escape with the
Oh no, he froze.
fire. That's right, the gas, and with the earth, the ashes. It's reduced to the ashes. The earth, like the earth is indestructible. So the ashes represent the essence. So the Torah is telling us we have to take this wild red, this red, fiery animal, an animalistic behavior, and you have to burn it, not destroy it, but burn it, reduce it to its essence.
Really?
Because in essence, this fun-seeking, thrill-seeking self is not negative. You want to live. You want to be alive. You want to feel alive. So you need a thrill. You're seeking for something novel, a novelty, some thrill, something exciting. Now we, unfortunately, associate thrill and excitement with junk food, junk lifestyle, lust, cravings, all negative things that are dead ends and that lead us downwards, and it goes nowhere. It's like a bull in a china shop. But imagine if you're able to harness that energy. If you're able to harness that energy, all that passion. You know, there's more energy in Wall Street than any synagogue I've ever been to, except 770. But if you're able to take that energy, that bacchanalian, chaotic, wild energy, and you're able to channel it, the holiness, that's the whole purpose. That's why the ultimate mitzvah, out of the 613 mitzvot, the Jerusalem Talmud, whenever it refers to the mitzvah without any adjective, it's referring to which mitzvah? The mitzvah of tzedakah. Because tzedakah captures the essence of what Judaism is all about. Because money is the ultimate ego symbol. Money represents all that energy, the powerful energy, egotistical energy. But instead of money being divisive and creating division, the 1% versus the 99%, suddenly you take that money and you build bridges, you build connections, you help those who are less fortunate, you create love and unity. So you're transforming that egotistical energy and you're harnessing it into something beautiful, into something constructive. And that's the essence of the whole Torah. This is what the Parah Adumah represents. The answer is not to suppress our nature, to suppress human nature, suppress the wild animal within us, the bull within us, or the cow within us, or whatever animal we may be, represent. But the answer is to reduce it to its ashes, harness that energy. In essence, there's nothing wrong. All that desire is, it's a passion for life. You want to live. You want to feel alive. But so instead of expressing it in something superficial, lust, fame, money, power, express it in something meaningful. Love, honor, joy. So that's the goal. The goal of Judaism is not to suppress, to destroy the human animal, but to harness that energy. And that's the essence of the Torah, and that comes from the essence of God, because all religions teach us, quit while you're behind. Man is born in sin. It's hopeless. Forget about this world. Life is so ridiculous. Human beings, human nature is so hopelessly compromised. The only hope is have faith and you go to heaven. Comes along Judaism and says, no, we confront it head on. Take the animal. Don't run away from the animal. Take the animal and burn it. Reduce it to its ashes. Get the essence. The essence is good. There's nothing wrong with the essence. It's just the garments, the expressions. But if you can harness that energy and express it in a wholesome way, in an uplifting, in a beautiful way, the animal can take you places that you can never go. We don't have the same strength of the animal. You can plow the field. You need an animal. You need a horse to ride the horse to get far. You can go far places. So that's the essence of the Torah. This only comes from the essence of God, of recognizing that this is God's world. The same God who created our neshama, our soul, also created the animal within us. So in essence, it must be good. It's not negative. God doesn't create anything negative. Ultimately, it's all good. You just have to extract that goodness. You have to be able to reduce it to its essence and utilize all that goodness.
Thank you. Yeah. That should be your question.
Ariella?
Rabbi, it's Howard.
Howard.
So here's my question. For the good people out there, like all of us on this shiur, and those that normally, intuitively, wouldn't commit these violent, hateful, angry, disgusting acts that are clearly against the Torah, and they're averus because they violate a lo saseh of killing, of stealing, etc. How do we know in our own minds whether we are observing these commandments because Hashem told us, or because we're living, breathing, thinking good people, and we're not just doing it on our own accord? In other words, if we want to get the reward for the mitzvah in real terms, and we want to really get the big annuity, the big payoff, well, then we really have to be doing it only because Hashem says no. Otherwise, we would want to violate. But intuitively, none of us would do these things anyway. So how do we know what the reason is for why we're not doing a bad thing, if you will?
You don't need a reason not to do it.
Well,
you don't need a reason not to do it. You don't do it because you got seichel, and you don't do it because you're neshama.
No, but what the rabbi said. No, but what the rabbi's saying is, it's not good enough if it's your logic, if it's your humanity that's keeping you from doing it. You should not be doing it because Hashem says so.
Okay, so Howard, now today, the answer is very clear. Because why is it that we are the only ones who find it disgusting? While everyone else, the media is egging them on, cheering them on. All the elite, cultural elite supremacists, intelligentsia, are edging them on. You have a whole party, a major party in this country, egging them on. Why are we disgusted? You know why we are disgusted? It's because we believe in Hashem. That's the only reason. The only reason we're able to think straight and we're able to be disgusted by things that are disgusting is because we believe in Hashem. Because those who don't believe in Hashem, these aggressive atheists who don't believe in Hashem, who don't have a single moral fiber left in their being, who are absolutely corrupt and bankrupt, and they don't find any of this disgusting. They're egging it on. They're encouraging it. They don't see anything wrong with it. Take over a few city blocks. Why not?
Their morality shifts for political and social convenience.
Tear down statues. Why not? Tear down, tear everything apart. Why not? Hurt, humiliate, harm, murder, steal, defund the police, dismantle the police. Sure, why not? The fact that they are not disgusted is because there's no God in their life. If a person really has God in your life, every fiber of your being and every bone in your body is disgusted by what's going on, is horrified. This is so evil, parading in the name of morality and justice and fancy names and euphemisms. It's all nonsense. It's absolute terrorism. We're dealing with a bunch of thugs, lowlifes, and terrorists. There's nothing noble about anything that's happening. If this was truly noble, after George Floyd's death, there would be a dazzling outbreak of goodness and kindness in this country like we've never seen before. People would be coming together and each other and respect each other. What we're seeing, this viciousness and this divisiveness and this hatred and this is absolute evil. Don't fool yourself for a moment. It's an unadulterated, there's nothing good here. There's not one iota of goodness here. It's 100 absolutely unadulterated evil. We're dealing here with power. We're dealing here with, has nothing to do with truth, nothing to do with morality, nothing to do with goodness, with godliness, with anything. And those people who fall for it, it's because there's no God in their lives. So that answers your question. The fact that you find it disgusting is because you have Hashem in your life. And therefore, every fiber of your being is disgusted by what's happening and can't believe and is shocked by what's going on, the total crumbling, this integration of civilization before our very eyes. If anyone would have told me this 3 months ago, this is even possible, we would have all laughed. How? It's not possible. It's happening.
It's also got to do with
Thank you.
With our Yiddishkeit, right? I mean, your Yiddishkeit drives you, it guides you. And the whole thing with the Yiddishkeit is Hashem. So there you go. So whatever.
Very good. Hanshi hat gesagt.
Reb Hanshi, thank you.
There you go. There you go. I miss all of you, by the way. Not that much, but
So, okay, so I want to wish everyone be well, stay healthy, and with
we
Hashem's
will. What's
help.
next Tuesday?
Thursday, 7:30. We're going to discuss Balak. We're going to discuss the prophecy of Mashiach is from the mouth of a non-Jewish prophet, from Bilam, ironically. So we'll discuss why that is, why the whole prophecy. So we'll discuss.
All right.
Hopefully, please join us. Everyone stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yasher Koach.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. Sei gesund. All the best.
That's you.
Wie gesagt.